It is my great pleasure to express my heartfelt gratitude and welcome to all the experts present in this webinar organized by ENVIS RP Kalyani University. I first of all welcome to our Honorable Vice-chancellor Professor Shankar Kumar Ghosh, who helped a lot to organize this webinar. I also welcome Professor Nimai Chandra Saha, Vice-chancellor of Bardhaman University, as one of the expert member of this webinar. I also welcome Dr. Ashok Sennal, the chairman of West Bengal Biodiversity Board, to participate in this seminar as an expert. I also welcome all other experts who will deliver their lecture on this day. We know 5th June every year we observe World Environment Day, and this year we are also observing this day due to COVID-19 through the webinar. And this year's theme of the Biodiversity Day is to observe the biodiversity, and we know the biodiversity plays a vital role for the safety of the environment, and this ENVIS center is established in the year 2002 in Kalyani University under the banner of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. We have different objectives on the work. That is, most of the work is to collect primary as well as secondary data on biotechnology, biodegradation, management of natural resources, as well as hazardous waste management to combat the environmental pollution. Recently, this year, the Ministry of Environment and Forest has taken initiative through ENVIS resource hubs and partners to create different type of advanced training on green skill development. And the motto is to generate different type of jobs related to environmental safety. The World Environment Day is held each year, and this year the main objective of this Environment Day is to celebrate the biodiversity. But we know throughout the world we have been affected by COVID-19 coronavirus, and this virus has affected nearly 32 countries of the world, and the situation of India is also worse due to the impact of this virus. It is under stress, and that 1/10 population of India is affected and they will lose their job and they will be under poverty line. So this seminar is very much appropriate in the present scenario, and we will try our level best to discuss on the present condition of the environment as well as the COVID-19 coronavirus infection. And I think the participants, they will get informations. On this occasion, I am happy to release the DESKU ENVIS newsletter on biotechnological and environmental aspects of COVID-19, which will be displayed after the inaugural session. Thank you to all. Now I request our Honorable Vice-chancellor, Professor Shankar Kumar Ghosh, to give his inaugural speech. Sir, please.
Distinguished resource persons and my dear participants, good morning all of you. It is a great pleasure for me to address you in the inaugural session of the web seminar as the head of the institute like Kalyani University. I am very pleased to be here today for the opening of this seminar on care to biodiversity on the occasion of World Environmental Day 2020. The ENVIS resource person on environmental biotechnology, University of Kalyani, supported by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India with New Delhi, is organizing the seminar in the recent world crisis situation. The proposal to conduction of this web seminar was proposed by the ENVIS coordinator and the staffs due to COVID-19 pandemic lockdown period. In this situation, we cannot gather in one place to obey the government protocol. So I gladly gave the permission to organize the seminar online, and it was come into bigger way throughout the globe, not in Bengal, India, and you have participated throughout the globe. It's a very much interesting for us, and we are very glad to know that you are listening this kind of seminar on World Environmental Day. The ENVIS Center of Kalyani University is the proud of this university and an iconic center on the theme environmental biotechnology in the country under Ministry of Environment and Forestry and Climate Change. The ENVIS Center does a wonderful work to the society through different environmental awareness activities, publications, different kind of mobile apps, which is very recognized by the Government of India, web information, knowledge-based product, seminar, workshop, hands-on training, celebrating special day, even skill development program in various corners like tissue culture and other part. Recently, ENVIS Center of Kalyani University has taken a new initiative of different preparation of district-wise GIS-based grid map on the different environmental parameters of West Bengal and green skill development program in various topics as per the instruction of the ministry. The green skills contribute to preserve or restore environmental quality for sustainable future, including entrepreneurship development, job creation to protect ecosystem and biodiversity. World Environmental Day celebrated on 5th of June today, and it was continued every year, is the biggest annual event in the world coined by the United Nations Environmental Programme, that is UNEP, to mark the environmental awareness among the people. Its main aim is to raise awareness to protect our nature and look at various environmental issues that are growing day by day. For healthy living, environment plays an important role, and it provides us air, water, food, etc. Environment is just like our neighborhood. Its surrounding conditions influence us and modify growth and development. It is one of the main prime actions to protect our environment. This year, the Center of World Environmental Day 2020 is celebrate biodiversity, hosting in Colombia in partnership with Germany. Biodiversity is the variation of Earth's terrestrial, freshwater and marine species as well as their habitat. Biodiversity is vital to the survival of all life on Earth and is also the cornerstone for the goods and the services of the environment that allow human societies to survive. There are lots of species in the world and they have every right to survive in the world. So biodiversity provides us food, water, resources as well as services such as climate control, pollination, flood mitigation and cycling of nutrients. Protecting biodiversity means protecting the human race and human habitat. Human actions including deforestation on wildlife habitats, intensified agriculture, acceleration of the climate change have upset the delicate balance of nature. We have changed the system that would naturally protect us and have created conditions that allow particular pathogens including coronaviruses to spread. Today, it is estimated that globally millions of diseases and deaths occur due to the present coronaviruses, which is called COVID-19. Provides us an opportunity to both revisit our relationship and nature and rebuild a more environmentally responsible world. So this coronavirus and the global perspective, we have transformed ourselves in such a way in near future that we can sustain ourselves and we can protect our biodiversity in a large scale. Yet these are the exceptional times in which nature is sending us a message. Nature is showing that we are on the verge of breakdown. It's a time to wake up and stabilize our relationships with nature. It's time to raise our voice to tell the world that we need action now. So this seminar is very much relevant to the present situation of the society. I wish you all success and hope that scientific discussions in each of the sessions would enrich us to build our approach. Special thanks to the ENVIS coordinator, Professor Panigrai, and the ENVIS staffs for their continuous effort in the crisis period to organize this kind of online seminar. I also grateful to the eminent speaker, those who are delivered their speak today on this special occasion on the Environmental Day. Thanks to the ENVIS Secretariat and Ministry of Environment and Forestry and Climate Change for their continuous support to establish this university is a bigger way to protect our environment, to protect our biodiversity, including Sundarban and neighboring places of this university. So I am so proud about the program which was launched by the ministry as well as our staff in our university are creating the global perspective so that we can enrich their different kinds of program in near future. We are very much transforming ourselves with the nature of the effect like COVID-19. So lastly, I wish this seminar in a great success. Thank you, all of you.
Good morning to everybody. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Professor Shankar Ghosh, Honorable Vice-chancellor, Kalyani University, and Professor Ashish Kumar Panigrahi, Coordinator, ENVIS Center, Kalyani University, and the officials and staff of the ENVIS Center for organizing the celebration of World Environment Day today and for inviting me to deliver a talk on this occasion. Earth came into existence about 4.6 billion years ago, and it took nearly 1 billion years for the first life to come to appear on the Earth. Since then, life has proliferated in its amazingly diversified forms into all nooks and corners. These amazing and diversified groups of animals, plants, microbes, the diversity of genes, that means the genetic diversity, and even the ecosystem diversity in which these organisms live, they occupy, altogether is called the biodiversity. We can think the biodiversity therefore in three levels. The first one, the species level, that means the species diversity, the diversity among the species. Secondly, the genetic diversity, that means the diversity within the species, and the ecosystem diversity or the diversity of habitats where these organisms live. This amazing world of biodiversity is the fruit of billions years of evolution, and it has formed a web of life in which the humankind is one of the important part. The earth is the abode of millions of organisms, and these millions of organisms, they themselves acquire the most essential elements for successful living and capacity to reproduce. And these essential elements are the energy, the water, and nutrients. These elements they get from their interactions among them, and these interactions and the potential activities, interactions between the physical and chemical and biological environment forms a unique interacting and ever-changing system that is known as the ecosystem. And this biodiversity is the pillar of that ecosystem, and which allows the function of the ecosystem to provide and extend the services of the ecosystem and helps to thrive humankind on the earth. And biodiversity, whatever the ecosystem services they render through the ecosystem, its value nearly $125 trillion per year. And this biodiversity is the foundation of life on earth, and it is crucial for the functioning of ecosystems, which provides us products and services. The services are provisioning, supporting, regulating, and cultural services. Through these services, we the people and all other living organisms on the earth enjoy free oxygen, fresh water, fertile soil, degradation of waste, food, medicines, shelter, protection from storms and floods, stable climate, recreation, and many more, including the most recent ones. It is proved that the epidemics, the pandemics, all are created through the mismanagement of the biodiversity. Now, we can also, in another way, we can say that biodiversity is a life support system. It safeguards the human health. It ensures food security of the mankind, and it has a great role in the global economy. It is also known that above 40% of the world's economy and 80% of the needs of the poor are made by biological resources. The present day new genetic stock-based agriculture, which are practiced in modern times, and the valuation of this global business of this agricultural products is about 3 trillion US dollar. And we know that there are about 6,500 herbal plants in India, and in the world millions of herbal plants are present, and from these herbal plants at least 50 life-saving drugs are manufactured, and more than 70% of the low molecules drugs are produced either from animal or plant bioresources, and an estimate shows that 20 best-selling drugs developed from plants, animals and microbes is more than 6 billion US dollar worldwide. And tourism is one of the biodiversity based industry which generates annually some 12 billion US dollar worldwide. And it's a fact, even the biodiversity is the pillar of the ecosystem services. It supplies everything, but still it cannot be forgotten that the technology could not be the alternative of ecosystem services. So that for our sustainable living, we should have to depend on ecosystem services and the biological diversity. Now the question comes, how many of biodiversity present in the world? It is estimated that there are nearly 12 million of biodiversity present at this moment, but the actual number of species worldwide is 1.7 million. And now let me come to India's biodiversity. India's geographical area 329 million hectare, and India is one of the 17 megadiverse countries in the world for its forests, grasslands, wetlands, coastal and marine ecosystems, and desert ecosystems, which are excellently rich in all respects. And another interesting fact is that with only 2.4% of the world's area, India accounts for 7.44% of the biodiversity of the world. And this richness of the biodiversity, uniqueness of the biodiversity of our country is due to unique biogeographic locations, diversified climatic conditions, and enormous ecodiversity and geodiversity. There are three major biological realms: Indo-Malayan, Eurasian, and Afrotropical. And this country has 10 biogeographic zones and 26 biotic provinces. The Indian biodiversity is also very rich due to the extensive variability in ecosystems. And as a result, we find that there are 1,01,681 animal species in comparison to the world number 15,64,647, which is 6.49%. And in case of the plants, there are 49,441 plant species, and in the world there are 4,65,688 plant species, which is 10.6% of the this Indian species number. About 5,150 plant species and 1,837 animal species are endemic to India. India's biodiversity includes wide relatives of agricultural crops and domesticated animals, which are a very good number. And there are a number of breeds from the domestic animals and plants which are present in India. About 7,000 species, nearly 33% of flowering plants and 18% of all plants found in India are believed to be endemic. In animal world, the most faunal endemism is found in case of amphibia, of which 62% species are believed to be endemic, and high diversity is found among the butterflies and moths with about 13,000 species, and also among the birds. The area of maximum diversity in India is found in the northeastern region. And this India has 16 major types and 251 subtypes of forest, and presently India has 24.6% of forest. Now, the problem is this Earth's natural capital and the biodiversity that underpins these goods and services are being eroded. That means the biodiversity is in great danger. Just I would like to mention a few examples how and to what extent this biodiversity, India's biodiversity and world biodiversity is in danger. During the last 500 years, 784 plants and animals got extinct. And in the last century, we have lost 35% of mangroves, 40% of forests, and 50% of wetlands. The IUCN Red List, which was published in 2016, reports that of the 44,837 species they have assessed, 38% are threatened and 804 are extinct. WWF, in their Living Planet Report 2018, mentioned that during the last 40 years, 60% decline of vertebrate population. And further, the United Nations last report says nearly 1 lakh biodiversity are under threat of extinction, and of these 50% within a decade. And this process of extinction will be caused due to anthropogenic effect. Then in India, what is the picture? In India, at least 600 vascular plant species and 150 animal species are facing threat of extinction. And further, India has already lost 22 species, 18 plant species and 4 animal species in India. Then what are the reasons? What are the main causes of extinction or loss of biodiversity all over the world as well as in India? First and foremost cause is the habitat loss and fragmentation, and it is due to the high rate of human population growth. And it is known that since 1800, sevenfolds of increase of population leading to 7.6 billion. And during this time, 30-folds of economic growth was happened. And after that, during the last 50 years, the economic growth has grown in such a way that it was depend on the biological resources like water, like soil, like other biological resources, and as a result, land was degraded, soil biodiversity was lost, and the agricultural biodiversity in total distant. Then second factor, the cause is the introduced species, invasive alien species, which are very, very responsible for loss of native species, and scientists are of opinion that this invasive alien species would be the main reason for the sixth extinction of species on the earth. And then next, overexploitation of plant and animal species, pollution of soil, water and atmosphere, global climate change, industrial agriculture and forestry, introduction of GMOs, and there are many other factors which are not mentioned here. All these are responsible for biodiversity loss. These are invasive species, invasive animal species. Then after knowing all these facts, the biodiversity is getting lost, and there are reasons are there which we know, but what actions to be taken? First and foremost action is to be taken by the government through the act and legislations. Then nature preserves are to be well maintained, and the number of nature preserves are to be to make sufficient for the umbrella species and most the species which are in the verge of extinction. Then hotspots are to be declared, reducing invasive species, habitat restoration especially for umbrella and other species, and captive breeding. There is another important aspect, action, and seed bank. Community based conservation is to be encouraged, that community is to be encouraged for conservation of the biodiversity through incentives, and research is the first and foremost task is to go for research on the towards the conservation of biodiversity. Climate change is to be reduced, global warming is to be reduced, greenhouse gases are to be reduced. This sustainable living is to be practiced through purchase of sustainable products, education, awareness of to the people, particularly the community people, and the green economy initiatives, low carbon and surface efficient economy to be initiated, to be practiced, creating opportunities for rural enterprises, ecotourism and bioprospecting, providing economic and social benefits, and identification of options for benefiting, for sharing the benefits of, out of the commercial utilization of bioresources to the community people. And then what are the steps India has taken towards the conservation of biodiversity in the country? We know that India has a very rich heritage of conservation. In 2252 BC, the Emperor Ashoka established protected areas, and later in 1936, first national park, Jim Corbett National Park, was established in India. India has 4.79% of total geographic area, which is dedicated for network of protected areas, and there are a number of protected areas in the country: biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation parks, heritage sites, tiger reserves, elephant reserves, rhino reserves, and many others, bird sanctuaries, etc. India has a national wildlife action plan which envisages 10% of the geographical area of the country under PA coverage. And the most important part towards the conservation of biodiversity is done in India in two ways, that is the conventional ways, the in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. For in situ conservations, I have already mentioned there are a number of protected areas, and the most important one as per the Biodiversity Act, the sacred groves which harbors very unique biodiversity, years of old biodiversity which are to be conserved. And ex situ conservation, sacred plants, seed bank, gene bank, cryopreservation, botanical and zoological gardens, and aquaria. Then the hotspots I have already mentioned. It is the hotspot in India. There are 4 hotspots: Indo-Burma, Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, Eastern Himalayas, and Sundarland. In the world, there are 35. There are 35 hotspots. Out of 35, India has 4 hotspots, and India is the signatory and of a number of conventions or agreements and legislations, and actively and sincerely the India is in the process of successful application of these conventions and agreements. The most important one is the Convention on Biological Diversity, which was held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil in 1992, and then Cartagena Protocol, CITES, SMS, and then Ramsar Convention, and UNICEF, UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, United Nations Convention on Combat Desertification, and most important one in the 2010 Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing, the most unique part of the Biodiversity Act and Convention on Biological Diversity. And lastly, India is also a party to the Sustainable Development Goal 2030. And there are a good number of legislations all over the world, and in most of the legislations, India is one of the signatories. And beside this, the India has enacted Biodiversity Act in 2002. There are frequently there are questions why there was a need to enact the Biodiversity Act, as there are a number of acts like Wildlife Protection Act, Forest Conservation Act, Environment Protection Acts, and a number of acts. Yes, there was a need, as because in Biodiversity Act there are certain provisions, certain sections which are not at all present in the existing acts and legislation. And the main and the objective of the Biodiversity Act is the conservation of biological diversity, and then the sustainable utilization of genetic resources, biological resources, and the equitable sharing of benefits. This Biodiversity Act was enacted to protect India's rich biodiversity and associated knowledge, and also one important task of the Biodiversity Act is that to check the biopiracy. India is in controversy in respect of the biopiracy, as because a number of bioresources, either from the origin is India or Pakistan, or the know-how, the age-old know-how of using these bioresources still, and these informations are being used by the other countries and got patented, and India is in controversy with those countries. And in the Act there are 12 chapters, 65 sections, and many subsections, and the regulatory rather the implementing agencies of the Biological Diversity Act. There are 3 implementing agencies. At the top, the National Biodiversity Authority, which is at the Chennai, and this Biodiversity NBA is responsible for all the matters relating to the foreign nationals, foreign institutes, foreign companies, and IPR, intellectual property rights, etc. And in the middle part, the State Biodiversity Board, besides its regulatory activities, it assists in the application of the Biodiversity Act by the Biodiversity Management Committee. This Biodiversity Management Committee is at the grassroots level, and they are responsible for preparation of People's Biodiversity Register, declaration of biodiversity heritage sites, and also the successful implication of the provision by access and benefit sharing provision in the country. Lastly, I can conclude that biodiversity is our life. If the biodiversity got lost at this rate, then in near future the survival of a human being will be threatened, so that our fate is in danger. The most important requirement is transformative changes. These transformative changes, without these transformative changes, this biodiversity loss cannot be checked. And what are these transformative changes? First thing, curbing wasteful consumption. It is known that the past 50 years, the rate of consumption by the humankind has increased 190%, and that too by exploiting the biological resources. As a result, the ecosystem got degraded and lost. And secondly, reducing the agriculture's environmental footprint and strict control of logging and fishing. Then it is the time to balance our consumption with the needs of nature and to protect the only planet that is our home. And we know that nature protects if she is protected. We have to save biodiversity to save humans.
Hello everyone, this is Anand Pandey. I'm a project scientist working at Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun. My institute comes under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. And I'm here to talk to you about my work in Antarctica. So the title of this presentation is Wildlife Monitoring in Antarctica. And This work is being done in collaboration with several agencies in India as well as abroad. I'll just give you a brief of that. I work at Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, and this work is done in collaboration with the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, Goa. And also, it comes under the umbrella of Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research. There are other agencies, including ENVIS, IPR and Indian Polar Research Network, in the First Institute of Information Technology, Delhi, and the Norwegian Institute of Nature Research. All of these agencies I'll be talking about later in my slide. As you know, I'm here to talk about Antarctica, and Antarctica actually is the one which Antarctica is the continent which is which is the one which does not have the word which which is on top of our minds at the moment, which the word which starts with C, and this word C I'm talking about is not corona but climate change. And in this era of coronavirus and the situation that we are all locked up in our homes or in a hotel, like me, I'm quarantined in a hotel. So you must be aware that climate change is something which should not be forgotten, because it is happening at the moment. And examples like the cyclone, Amphan cyclone that happened in the West Bengal a few days back, it's one of the prime example of that. The areas around the world which are actually vulnerable to climate change are the areas which have a lot of ice, and areas such as the Arctic Ocean, which is basically an ocean which is frozen every year, and then tropical mountain peaks which have snow-capped mountain peaks like our own Himalayas, and of course Antarctica, which is the 5th largest continent in the world. It is also one of the coldest and windiest continent, but you would be surprised that it is also one of the highest continent in the world, with almost an average elevation of 2.5 kilometers. World Environment Day of this year has biodiversity as its main theme, and I'll be talking about Antarctic biodiversity, but you must be aware that Antarctic biodiversity is not actually the terrestrial biodiversity that we are talking about. It is mostly the ocean around Antarctica, which is highly diverse and which supports life in Antarctica, which is the Antarctic marine ecosystem. And one of the key species of Antarctic marine ecosystem is the Antarctic krill, which is the keystone species of Antarctic marine ecosystem, a keystone species on which all the other food chains are actually depending upon. And if you remove this keystone species, you are expecting that the ecosystem will collapse. And that is the role that Antarctic krill plays in that ecosystem, in the Antarctic marine ecosystem. Also, in Antarctic marine ecosystem, Antarctic krill acts as a food for most of the species which are charismatic, like emperor penguins, species which are vulnerable, which are dependent on their climate, species which are like seals, which are breeding on this sea ice. So this is frozen sea on which they breed. So if there is no frozen sea, obviously their populations will decline. And species such as elephant seals, which are well monitored and which have shown that climate has a great impact on their populations and on their distribution. But there are other species which are also data deficient, and here I'll be talking mostly about these species, because these species on which our wildlife monitoring program depends upon. Wildlife Institute of India Antarctic program is actually has two major components, two major objectives: monitoring seabirds and marine mammals in Antarctica and Southern Ocean, where we look at their distribution hotspots, we look at how they change their ranges, and also looking at their abundance, with a long-term view of monitoring changes with respect to climatic variables, and also looking at their genetics and looking at their phylogeography and looking at their population genetics of a selected few species of seabird. This is to develop a long-term monitoring as well as conservation plan for wildlife in Antarctica. Now, our study area comprises of this particular triangle, which is starting from the tip of South Africa to the station on the right, which is Bharti, and then Matri. So this particular triangle is the area where we work upon. This is basically along the coast of Antarctica and also this particular area. We do vessel-based counts. We go from South Africa to Bharti and Matri by a ship, or some people also fly, but most of our work in wildlife monitoring program is done by ship, and we travel from South Africa to Bharti and do vessel-based counts. And this is done mostly in the daylight hours of sea state less than 5 and good visibility. and where we count seabirds and marine mammals. And how this data is used, I'll show it in this slide. That if you see that we are starting from here, this is typically the route of the ship that we take, and these are the two stations which we hit while moving from South Africa to Bharati to Maitri and back. So this is the pink circles are basically the marine mammal records, and the green circles are basically the seabirds that we see in this particular this we record in this particular journey. And this is actually, this data is used year after year to look at changes between annual changes and also seasonal changes. So our findings, we have been able to record almost 49 species of seabirds in this area, where we are also showing, looking at range shifts in some of the species. With long-term data, we would be more certain about these results. We also found out 16 marine mammal species, obviously dominated by humpback whales, which come to the Southern Ocean for foraging. And we are also looking at seal distribution, the seals which are distributed around Indian area where we work. And how do we document them? How do we record them? So basically we fly over them in helicopters, in transits, and we attach a GoPro camera on the base of the helicopter and record video document them. If I show you this clip, you would be more aware of how this survey is being done. So there's a lot of noise, but this noise is we have maintain a certain height to avoid disturbance to these seals. And then we record all this data to classify habitat, to look at their behavior, and a lot of things, individual distance, a lot of things can be actually measured from this particular footage. Then we also, in this area, if you look at this map is the area where we work upon. This yellow arrow is showing where our Indian station Bharati is based, and we divide the entire area into 100 meter by 100 meter grids, and then we look at birds which are breeding there. So I'm talking about this particular bird, which is snow petrel, which breeds in natural rock cavities around this area, and then we classify this area based on how much density of nest has in this area. So all these squares that you see is basically snow petrels which are breeding here. You can see that we have classified them on the basis of density of snow petrel nests. Then what do we do? Demarcate these zones. So we collect the data, and so that we have long-term data for climate change analysis. So this work, we have been able to identify breeding sites for 4 species around Indian station. If you see Bharati, near to Bharati, we have Wilson's storm petrel, we have snow petrel, we have South Polar screw, we have Adley penguin. You can read about all these species individually, and you can ask questions later. We also developed motion sensing cameras and fitted them on the nests of snow petrels, and we are getting all this footage from these motion sensing cameras, which are developed in association with ENVIS, Institute of Information Technology, Delhi. And if you see what does this nest monitoring has given us, it has given us the breeding cycle of snow petrels there, and we know now know that when are the nests occupied, when are the eggs laid, when do the eggs hatch, and when do both parents leave. It also gives us information about the laying success and hatching success of species, and tells us whether the nesting has been successful or not. And this is just 2 years data, so if you have multiple years data, you can obviously look at these changes with respect to climate. Also mapping Adley penguins over there. So Adley penguins, they breed in colonies, large colonies with a lot of birds, and we have a very young colony which has come up near to our station, and we have mapped it, and we have been able to estimate the number of breeding pairs over there using aerial surveys with helicopter support. But now we are actually moving on to using drones for these surveys, so probably we'll get much better results, more accurate results in the future. We're also doing genetic monitoring, where there is little genetic information available for these 2 species which breed near Indian station, storm petrel and snow petrel. And we collected tissue samples from our stations, both Maitri and Bharati, and then we looked at their phylogeny, and especially for snow petrels, we have looked at their phylogeny, and then we're also looking at their phylogeography. So if you look at, I'm talking about snow petrels here, so if you look at this particular figure, you will see that each of this circle is a unique haplotype, and size of the circle is basically the number of samples that contribute to this haplotype. So you see this particular haplotype, it has both red, which is Bharti, and yellow, which is Maitri. So this haplotype is shared between these two populations. So there are around 5 haplotypes like this, which are shared between these two populations, which indicates that there is gene flow which is happening between Bharti and Maitri stations. That means these birds are moving between these two stations, which shows that even these two stations are like around 3,000 kilometers apart. So the birds can move a lot, and there is some gene flow that is happening. This is what this data is telling us. All this data is now contributing to our Antarctic wildlife monitoring program. So it is like an opportunity. We're also geotagging seabirds over there, looking at their movement patterns, and also planning to census animal populations from space using remote sensing data. We are also collaborating with the other agencies, and all of this is actually feeding on to our national mission on strategic knowledge for climate change. Opportunities for students. Students have a lot of opportunity to participate in Indian Antarctic program. One of the major program is the student participation program, which if you go to this website, you'll find about this. This usually is advertised in January, February every year, and then you can participate in that year's expedition. There is also Students on Ice program, which you can participate. There is Antarctica 2041 program, which you can participate. You can develop your own research project with the help of your university HOD or university scientists and other professors. And if you have any queries, you can contact me on Twitter, and you can contact me on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, and obviously you can always mail me. My email ID was given in the first slide. I'm also part of this particular student group, which is Indian Polar Research Network, which actually looks at education, awareness, and outreach of polar sciences in India. It is part of the APEX body, which is the Association for Polar Early Career Scientists. And you can visit this website, iprindia.wix.com, and there is a join us form. You can fill that form, which is a 2-minute form, and you can join us. Any student who is interested in polar sciences can join us, and we'll be happy to help you. I would like to thank these people, especially the Ministry of Earth Sciences, for providing me an opportunity to work in Antarctica. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have through email. Please send me queries, and also you can send me queries through Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Thank you very much.
Wishing all the participants of this webinar my best wishes on this very important day when all the world celebrates with us the World Environment Day. We are going through very tough times, and the entire humanity is facing so. Who had imagined that one day we will have to celebrate environment and biodiversity locked up within the 4 walls of our own respective homes? But I wish to extend my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to our Honorable Vice-chancellor, Sir Professor Shankar Kumar Ghosh, for extending his patronage for this timely webinar, and to Professor Ashish Kumar Panigrahi, the coordinator of ENVIS on Environmental Biotechnology of the University of Kalyani, and his entire team for planning and executing the same, and also for having given me an opportunity to speak on this occasion. The theme for celebrations of this year's World Environment Day is Celebrate Biodiversity. And I have been asked to speak on the topic Corona Pandemic and its effect on biodiversity. Thinking about it, it's not only the pandemic that could have had effect on biodiversity, but it is the other way around too. That is, both the pandemic and biodiversity per se have effects on each other. The issues that I found were common to both the linked topics of discussion were how the pandemic has affected biodiversity during its time of build-up and spread, and what could be expected in the post-COVID situation. Two most important issues that crossed my mind were a major setback in the policies and programs that have been pre-decided for this year, and secondly, the fund availability for conservation and for research on biodiversity. Other than this, there is a forced ban on wildlife trade, and it probably has shown its effect on wildlife crime. I'll be discussing this later on. Other than this, anthropogenic pressures, the spread of the disease, the influence of the same in the genesis and spread of this novel coronavirus, and the anthropogenic pressures on biodiversity have never been so aggressively made responsible for human perils and deaths before this pandemic. But the disease has left the earth detoxify itself, which has been observed categorically in many differences that we are seeing. There has been increased wildlife visibility, recovery of ecosystems have been noted, decreased global emissions all over the world, making noteworthy differences to the air and water quality around us. And finally, nature coming back to the aid of mankind by offering solutions too for combating the disease from its repository of biodiversity wealth. Among all these issues, I shall probably have time to discuss fund status, the policies and programs, and the wildlife trade, wildlife crime, and solutions that biodiversity holds to take care of this pandemic in terms of research leading to drug discovery. The year 2020 was a much awaited year for biodiversity enthusiasts. The year marks the final year of the United Nations Decade on Biodiversity with the theme Living in Harmony with Nature. This program that was initiated in 2011 to promote the implementation of a strategic plan on biodiversity and its overall vision of living in harmony with nature was so famously named as the IT Biodiversity Targets, which were 20 strategically planned targets at the global and national levels. 2020 had a series of programs scheduled for discussions and planning, the most important being the preparation of post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. The United Nations Environment Programme, the UNEP, had declared 2020 as the super year for nature, and a number of related international meetings and conferences stand cancelled or indefinitely postponed due to the pandemic. We just had the International Biological Diversity Day on 22nd May. The theme of this year was or is Our Solutions Are in Nature. What a meaningful theme, especially in the times that we live now. With the lockdown in place, the celebrations were dampened in execution, but definitely not in spirit. And today we celebrate the World Environment Day with the theme being Celebrate Biodiversity in congruence with the United Nations programs, of course. This is just a look at a few major international meets that have been disrupted due to this pandemic. The World Conservation Congress of the IUCN, scheduled to be held in France in June 2020, has been postponed to January 2021. The discussions delayed. There are other meetings that have been mentioned in the slide, but I'll not go into the details. But the main point is that discussions delayed shall show their repercussions in days and years to come. It is extremely important to not only understand, but also remember all the time, just as our conscience would remind us that the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the climate that makes our planet habitable all come from nature. And now that we live in exceptional times, nature is sending us an important message that we are on the verge of a breakdown and that it is time to wake up, to take notice, to reinstate our relationship with nature. Unfortunately, we have been held back with all these delays and disruptions to follow the norms of the pandemic, social distancing. Next, we could talk about another major setback that the pandemic will definitely show its effect on, that is the funds that will be made available for biodiversity conservation, for habitat restoration, etc. And the multitude of research, the conservation activities, all depend on these funds for their proper implementation. But it is obvious that with human health and containment of the novel coronavirus research as high priority, a setback to research on biodiversity conservation is definitely hypothesized. And added to this is a total collapse of the ecotourism sector, which has a major revenue generating avenue for the wildlife conservation and habitat restoration in the past for the concerned ministry and state departments. Furthermore, the inevitable global economic recession that we have already started witnessing shall leave the governments and conservation bodies bereft of funds that could be utilized for conservation and research on biodiversity. So we are most likely to have an economic turmoil and social changes all over the world post this pandemic, and we are at loss to understand how these changes are going to change the way things were planned to be done earlier. A look at the yearly budget for conservation activities through centrally sponsored schemes of the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change of the Government of India, which includes programs like Green India Mission, Forest Fire Prevention and Management, Project Tiger, Project Elephant, Development of Wildlife Habitats, Biodiversity Conservation, Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems, etc., that the ministry basically transfers to different states and union territories. The budget shown over here is basically the actual budgets of 2018 and 2018-19, the revised of 2019-20, and the proposed of 2021. And the green color column is the revenue that is generated and contributes to the total budget, and the blue line, of course, is the capital that the government invests. And as we can see, the lion's share comes from the revenue that is generated. And with ecotourism activities shelved for the time being, this is going to have major setback. And with the uncertainty of an unknown period, we do not know how this will fare. To just get an idea of how much revenue is generated, I'll just give you a look into the revenue that is collected by the Directorate of Forest of Government of West Bengal in terms of the different units of revenue generation, like minor forest products, bamboo, grazing, firewood and charcoal, timber and coal, and others. In this table, of course, stands for ecotourism generated revenue. And this red part, of course, is going to have a major setback, since all the ecotourism activities have been shelved in terms of COVID-19 for combating or for coping up with the social distancing norms. Next, we come to the illegal wildlife trafficking practices, or wildlife crime and wildlife trade. These trafficking practices have resulted in the emergence of zoonotic diseases, which means pathogens that jump from one species to another one, COVID being one of them. Such actions are primarily undertaken, these trafficking actions are primarily undertaken with the intentions of consumption of bushmeat, keeping unconventional exotic pets, making animal skin accessories, home decoration, trophy decorations, etc. And all of these are desires of humankind amounting to greed and overconsumption. We just don't need them. The corona pandemic has emerged as one of the worst zoonotic disease of recent times that has taken the whole world in its grip. And with the realization of the same, the acting executive secretary of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity called for a global ban on wildlife markets to prevent and control future pandemics. And with such a forced ban on wildlife trade in action world over, there has been a spike in wildlife crime, and the rate of such crime has increased manifold. Wildlife trade, both legal and illegal, are reasons for concern in the context of zoonotic pandemics. Their genesis, their spread, their intensity, everything kind of depends on these wildlife trades. A report by the Wildlife Conservation Society, based on media reports, gives an overview of wildlife crime in Indian states during the lockdown period of just 16-day span, April 13 to April 30th. 13 states recorded 25 cases of wildlife crime, And the interesting part is that if you look into just the year before wildlife crimes, we'll see that there were 388 cases in 365 days, and the percentage has increased manifold. With all the crimes kind of coming down during lockdown period, wildlife crime has increased. This is alarming. This is the departure and destination routes of the worldwide illegal wildlife trade given by the World Customs Organization in its illicit trade report, and we see that it's a major avenue of people's interaction. And there is an organization, the perspective of the traffic, basically, which stands for Trade Related Analysis of Fauna and Flora in Commerce. They have their perspective in, it's basically a bureau under the United Nations Environment Program, and they work globally on trade in wild animals and plants. And their perspective in terms of corona pandemic and wildlife trade is that traffic supports and encourages tough emergency measures to regulate wildlife trade to reduce zoonotic disease risk. It believes in introducing stringent management tools to enhance traceability, certification, and monitoring of wildlife trade, and it suggests strengthened legislations, which is very important. We will come to the next topic, which is just like the pandemic came upon us as nature's fury, so does nature hold solutions too for the same. And this is about drug discovery research, and it emphasizes that solution is in nature. Biodiversity is a natural repository for most medicines that we develop. As per estimates of the World Economic Forum, over 50% of modern drugs are developed from natural plant extracts. And so clearly biodiversity is essential not only for the ecosphere but also for human health and medicine. Natural world contains pathogens, but these pathogens are in ecosystemic stability. We humans disturb this stability. Now, with millions of people quarantined under lockdown, but still people getting infected in thousands, dying because of the infection, it is imperative that a single or multiple drug for treatment and vaccine be discovered for prophylactic use. The urgency of research concerning finding a suitable candidate for drug development and vaccine discovery has grown leaps and bounds. In the last few months, have seen many screening and simulation experiments with plants with the idea of developing new drugs and vaccines. The most convincing candidates have been Widenia somnifera or ashwagandha, Artemisia annua, Nagdana, aloe vera, neem, and cinchona. Leaving out cinchona, all the four of these plants they're growing in the Kalyani University Herbal Garden, and it gives me immense pleasure to mention this over here. It is heartening to note that the CSIR has received approval from the DGCI for 2 clinical trials, one of which is assigned to the Jawaharlal Nehru Tropical Botanical Garden and Research Institute, and it deals with the phytopharmaceutical, again a plant extract, of course. The Spanish National Research Council is in the process of undertaking molecular farming research using Nicotiana benthamiana as a biofactory for production of drug deemed suitable for treating novel corona as part of its new Potiana project. With plans in line, how could the algae lag behind? There are already reports of a marine red algae as a suitable prophylactic and another algae that has been found suitable for manufacturing low-cost COVID-19 test kits. So we see nature does gives us solutions. As my concluding remarks, I would like to emphasize that the solution is truly in nature. Nature prevents and responds to some of the most pressing challenges faced by humans today. The emergence of COVID-19 has underscored the fact that when we destroy biodiversity, we destroy the system that supports human life. The more biodiverse an ecosystem is, the more difficult it is for one pathogen to spread rapidly or dominate. Whereas biodiversity loss provides opportunity for pathogens to pass between animals and people. Human actions, including deforestation, encroachment on wildlife habitats, Intensified agriculture and acceleration of climate change have upset the delicate balance of nature. We have changed the system that would naturally protect us and have created conditions that allow pathogens to spread. COVID-19 has provided us an opportunity to rebuild a more environmentally responsible world. With the lockdown in place, emissions decreased, air and water got a bit more cleaner, degrading habitats got restored to some extent, the presence of wildlife around us, the ones we share our planet with, became a little more obvious with increasing species visibility, and we have realized that we really do not need so much in terms of consumption and that less is more than enough. Thank you.
Hello everyone, myself Punarbasu Chaudhuri from Department of Environmental Science, University of Calcutta. The hearty congratulations to Department of Environmental Science, University of Kalyani, ENVIS program on environmental biotechnology for organizing World Environment Day 2020, for organizing this wonderful session, web-based session on care to biodiversity. Today I am planning to talk with mangrove biodiversity of Indian Sundarbans. To begin with, first, what is mangrove? Mangroves are the plants that grow at the interface between land, sea, or estuary, mainly in the tropic and the subtropical area. So as from this picture you can see, this is a very typical ecosystem having some unique characteristics. It grows in muddy substrate having tidal influences, have aerial negative geotrophic roots, which is known as pneumatophores. From this picture you can see these are the pneumatophores. They have some salt excretion property and they are having a special type of germination which is known as viviparous germination, as it is seen from this, and waterlogged, physiologically dry and anoxic soil. To combat with this environmental stress, mangrove has typical adaptations which are their unique characteristics. Next, let's see what are the mangrove distribution among the world. So these green lines you can see, these are the mangroves of the world. It is distributed among 137 countries globally. And in India, we are very lucky that we are having several mangrove patches in different estuaries along east and west coast of India. Among these coastlines, these mangroves, Sundarban mangrove is the largest mangrove of India. Obviously, this mangrove is shared between India and Bangladesh. You can see approximately 60% of this forest belong to Bangladesh and 40% belong to India. Contiguous portion of this Sundarban, both India and Bangladesh, represents the largest mangrove patch of the world, having highest number of biodiversity. Now, why Sundarban? From nomenclature, Sundarban means the Sundar means beautiful and Ban means forest. So it's a beautiful forest, the largest forest area of the world and having several conservation status. It is tiger reserve since 1973. It is having 3 wildlife sanctuaries. It declared as a national park in 1984. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1989. Biosphere reserve from the same year, and very recently from 2019 it is declared as a Ramsar wetland. So these so many characteristic conservation status in a single conservation area, it's very rare to find this type of characteristics in a single forest. And in another way, it's a very unique for mangrove habitat, which is tiger land. So the only mangrove tiger land of the world is Sundarban. So there are so many reasons why these mangrove forests are unique. Now let's see the biodiversity of Sundarban. So what is biodiversity is known to all. So this Sundarban harbors nearly 180 species of flowering plant, including true mangroves and mangrove associated, 270 species of algae, 125 species of fungi, both macro and micro, 167 species of lichens, 177 species of mollusks, 497 species of insect, 364 species of fishes, 71 species of reptiles, 234 species of birds, 47 species of mammals. So these are the list, but it is not all. There are so many new reports are coming day by day. So there are so many new species records from this habitat by several researchers from different institutions. Now, to begin with, uh, this is a display board at Jharkhali Ecological Park. The picture is taken from that ecological park. The mangrove ecosystem having the producer levels and the consumers levels. To begin with the biodiversity, there are microscopic biodiversity and the macroscopic biodiversity. The microscopic biodiversity world is a huge world, and it is today we will discuss about the macroscopic diversity. We are not discussing about the microscopic diversity, which is having lots of bacteria, fungi, phytoplanktons, zooplanktons, which are the basic fundamental lower strata of the ecosystem. Then we are having different type of consumers, and the top level consumers here is the tiger and the crocodile. Now let's come to the macroscopic diversity. So macroscopic diversity begins with this type of algal flora. These algae grow on the submerged portion of the plants, on the soil, on the substratum, and in the benthic strata. So this is one species of Catanella found in attached with submerged mangrove portion, particularly pneumatophore and the branches. There are lots of macrofungi. These macrofungi having a very important role in nutrient recycling. There are different type of lichens. Lichen diversity of mangrove is very important. These three type of lichen, the crustose, foliose, and fruticose. These three type of lichen is found in Indian Sundarbans. The lower plant group in the particular pteridophyte. This is the only fern found in mangrove habitat. Acrostichum aureum. This is known as mangrove fern. This is a very interesting species called Sundari. It is very rare now in Sundarban due to freshwater flow in Indian Sundarban. This species is now not very common, but it is said that the name Sundarban has a relationship with this plant Sundari. So it is the scientific name Heritieriformis. Next, the most dominant species is the Abyssinia. 3 species of Abyssinia has been seen in Sundarban: Abyssinia alba, Abyssinia officinalis, and Abyssinia marina. Besides this Abyssinia, we are having the other species: Zacantha silicifolius, Candelia candel, Rhizophora apiculata. These are the very interesting characteristics mangrove having. Stilt root, you can see in this picture, this type root system is the stilt root. This is Bruguera gymnorrhiza. the major dominant species of the mangroves. So Sonaracea, one of the most economically important plant of this region. This is Sonaracea apetala. Another species is Sonaracea castuolaris. This one is Xylocarpus granitum, Agiceras corniculatum, Ceriops. Two species are found, Ceriops decandra and Ceriops tagal. It is in different regions we are having these plants. This is Lumnitzeria. This is very now very rarely found mangrove due to pollinator. This species is declining. Next one is mangrove palm, the Nipa palm or Nipa fruticans. It's a palm-like plant, but without having a stem. It is having a round-shaped fruit and very economically important plant. Another is the Phoenix paludosa. This is the tiger like this habitat, Phoenix habitat. And Exocoria agalocha is a poisonous mangrove. It's known as eye poisoning mangrove. Now, among the noteworthy fauna, the faunal diversity is very rich. You can see different type of mollusk found in different intertidal zones of Sundarban. These are the oyster and barnacles. You can see this is the jetty. The pillar of the jetty is being covered with these barnacles. These are the oysters. And barnacle is very abundant. These are the blistering barnacles. There are different type of barnacles, but this one is the most common barnacle of mangroves. Crabs and shrimps, another economically important plant. These are the horseshoe crabs, which are medicinally very important. Different type of bioactive compounds being isolated from their lysates. These are the tiger shrimps, one of the most economic product of the mangrove habitats. Mud crab, another economically important product. These are the fiddler crab and these are the ghost crab. Beside this, there are different other type of crabs are there. And this ghost crab prefers the coastal line, and this fiddler crab, this is the mangrove indicator. It's a very important that specifically on mangroves, this type of fiddler crabs are found. There are 3 types of fiddler crab, and this is one predominant species. Another is the honeybee. Honeybee in mangroves is very important for pollination as well as the production of honey. Thousands of tons of natural honey being collected from this type of mangroves by the local people, which having very good market value in and this honey having very good quality of honey having high market price. Fish, there are both soft bone and ostrictics and chondrichthyes type of fishes. So we can find different type of ray. This is gitter ray. This is sting ray. This is a mud skipper. It one is a very important mangrove indicator species, mud skipper. These are some other fish and crustaceans. These are the while fishing net, the local people use fishing net to catch the fishes, and this is catch of one net. While we are doing field work, we have taken this photograph. Turtle and tortoise, it is another important aspect. Different type of turtles come into the mangrove habitat for laying their eggs, particularly olive ridley turtles. Beside this, the Bata gurbaska is there in Sundarban. Another top level consumer is the crocodile. Beside this, there are different type of reptiles, particularly monitor lizard. 3 types of monitor lizard has been reported from this region. and only the estuarine crocodile is found. And Sundarban is having very good number of crocodiles. While visiting Sundarban, many people have observed this crocodile is taking sunbath in the tidal interflats. Snake diversity is very rich. There are different type of snakes. You can see the rat snake, and the most dangerous snake of Sundarban is the common krait. There are so many snake bite reported from this species, the common krait. These two type of cobra, they are found in Sundarban: spectacled cobra and the monociliate cobra. This one is a green pit viper, is a poisonous snake. The banded krait, these all are. The banded krait is very poisonous, but it is a very docile. It's usually not attack human. So though it is poisonous, this banded krait bite is not very common in Sundarban. This one a very interesting picture. This photograph is taken by Colonel Shakti Banerjee. Well, this is a python just entangling a spotted deer. It's a reticulated python. It's very rare shot in Indian Sundarban. The beautiful spectra of birds, particularly kingfishers. This 6 type of kingfisher is the snaps are taken in different regions of Sundarban. So kingfisher diversity is very rich. There are heron and egrets, different type of herons, and this one is the African Goliath heron. This is a migratory bird coming from Africa, and the wingspan is nearly 2 meters, a huge bird. Then is the adjutant stork, grey heron, a painted stork, and lots more. There are water birds, waders, the pheasant-tailed jacana, white-breasted water hen, bronze-winged jacana, purple moorhen, wimbrel, curlew. So these are the different type of waders found here. Migratory birds in winter, from different regions, these birds came to the water bodies in Sundarban. So starting from different type of whistling teals, pintail, spotbill, cottontail, shoveler. There are lots more bird diversity in this region. And the birds of prey, starting from osprey, crested serpent eagle. This one is Brahmini kite, shikra. So these are very common in there. Among the mammals, spotted deer, different type of squirrels, mongoose, flying fox, a bat is common. Wild boar is another important. This is a prey species of the tiger. Lots of wild boar seen in different parts of the forest. Rhesus monkey, and obviously the Royal Bengal tiger. And this tiger is very expert swimmers. You can see it can swim almost 10 to 15 kilometers at a stretch. They can swim. And there are reports of crossing large stretches of river. So these are the little glimpses of the biodiversity, and the dwellers of this area traditionally using this biodiversity for maintenance of their livelihood, treatment of different disease, recreations, rituals. So biodiversity is an integral part of the livelihood of the people of Sundarban. They worship Bon Bibi, is a goddess of tiger. There are lots of community outreach products from biodiversity. They prepare different type of material like the hat, this type of fan, this plate and other baskets from the mangrove palm, particularly Nipa and Phoenix pallidosa. The good quality of honey is collected from mangroves. You can see we have studied the pollens from this mangrove honey and having very, very good variety, particularly this value addition of the natural resource, having a very important prospect when we are using biodiversity for the local livelihood enhancement. Another product, this I have told about, this Sonarisia. The jelly can be product from this Sonarisia, which are having very high market potentiality. From Nipa fruticans, we can get very sweet exudes from the cut fruit or the inflorescence, and this is having very good soft drinks or beverage. As a beverage or soft drinks, we can use these exudes. So these are the some examples for utilizing the diversity. And the diversity is under very threat. These threats can be classified in two types, on the natural and the anthropogenic. And in between, we are having anthropogenic influence climate change effects. So this enhancement of the natural calamities, there are several natural calamities like the cyclone and other things which is threatening the biodiversity. We are having siltation problem, bank collapse problem. Regarding anthropogenic activities, human settlement are there. There are lots of pollution, agricultural, pesticide, chemicals are coming from different type of industries and getting accumulated in the habitats. Problems from agriculture and aquaculture. Man-animal conflict, as because the tiger, crocodile are sharing the same habitat with the human. Sometimes tiger straying is happening. Tigers entering into the villages, and then the village people are killing the tigers. Sometimes when the fisherman or the honey collector enters into the forest, tiger kills the human. So this type of man-animal conflict is continuously there. Poaching is there. There are poachers. They're killing the tigers. They are killing the wild boars. They are killing the deers. There are uncontrolled ecotourism, and finally the reduction of freshwater flow due to Farakka barrage, which is cause for change in biodiversity pattern in Sundarban. And finally, we have conclude with this beautiful picture. This is I like this picture very much. It's an illustration by Mr. Arnob Roy, and wildlife artist. If you look deeply into the picture, you can find all the biodiversity components of Sundarban. In this face of the tiger, Arnob Roy has incorporated all the species, very observed minutely, and WWF have used this beautiful picture on the cover page of a catalog. It's the state of the art report of biodiversity of Indian Sundarban. It's freely available. You can download it from the website of WWF. And finally, I'm sharing you one picture. This is a killed monitor lizard, which has been attached to a train compartment into the Shialda division. And it's a very brutal thing. The biodiversity awareness, due to lack of biodiversity awareness, people are killing these animals, and they are hanging it in the trains. We should create awareness for the conservation of this species, and let's join our hands to conserve the Sundarban, our ecological heritage. And thank you for your patient hearing, and I'm very grateful for my research team and my research scholars and the funding agencies who extend their collaboration, and without their help it was not possible. And finally, these are the references I used for this lecture, and thank you all for patient hearing.
Hello everyone, I am
Dr. Subhrangshu Naik from Odisha Biodiversity Board. I'm very glad to be a part of this webinar on care to biodiversity, which is taking place on the great occasion of World Environment Day. Well, this is a very means unique type of situation where we are conducting web seminars, and also it's a new experience for all of us. Well, my topic is biotechnology boosts biodiversity conservation. Of course, nowadays technological intervention is taking place everywhere, and we are using various technologies in various fields. So in this context, for biodiversity conservation also, we are applying many technological aspects, and especially biotechnological tools are very helpful directly or indirectly for the conservation of biological diversity. So I will be focusing on various widely used or popular technologies which are being conducted nowadays to protect the biodiversity or to conserve the biodiversity, you can say. So I hope I can manage, I can give an overview within this 15 minutes which is allotted to me. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, what is biodiversity? My earlier speakers must have clarified what is biodiversity, what is bioresources. Still, just a review. It has been defined by the Article 2 in the Convention of Biological Diversity. You all must be knowing that it is the biodiversity is the variability of among the living organisms in variability among flora, fauna, microorganisms, and it is also including diversity within species, diversity of ecosystems, diversity of genes. So biological diversity is a vast you can say it covers a vast area. Vast means everything, every living organism showing variability, it all includes biological diversity. Then obviously the plants, the animals, the microorganisms, their parts, their byproduct, which has biological potential value, uh, excluding the human genetic material. Those are called the bioresources. So these are these biodiversity and bioresources. These have been defined in the Biological Diversity Act 2002, which I'll be talking later in this presentation. As we all know, I am not going to describe or talking in detail about the various aspects of biological diversity. Let's uh, you know that there are so many threats nowadays to the biological diversity. Some major threats to the wildlife biodiversity is the poaching. So animals like elephants, tigers, other animals are being killed for their elephants are killed for their tusk, skin of leopard, tiger. Poaching is a major threat, of course. Then the forest fire, which kills a very large number of animals, especially the insects, which are very helpful or which are required for the cross pollination. They are the cross pollinators. Means it's a very critical part of the agriculture ecosystem. Insects. Then in this agriculture ecosystem, excessive use of fertilizers, excessive use of pesticides, these also kill many insect diversity, or which insects are very much required for the sustainable ecosystem of agriculture. Then these invasive alien species, both in animals and plants, there are so many species defined defined and has been pointed out in various states of the states of India. These invasive species are dominating in population over the native population. So there are so many other threats also, but major threats are these. These are the major threats. So there are various aspects of conservation, obviously. So the major aspect of the I can say about this topic, which is assigned to me, that biotechnology. Biotechnology, of course, that uh, biotechnology, of course, helps, or it supports the supports for biodiversity conservation. So science should be exploited in a responsible and safe manner to develop technologies that would save individuals, countries, and biological diversity. Biotechnology is mainly based on the mixture of many subjects like molecular biology, biochemistry, recombinant DNA technology, microbiology, micropropagation, transgenic technologies, embryogenic technologies, etc. All these technologies, this is biotechnology is a broad discipline actually. This all these technologies are integrated to develop new tools or new technologies, which in turn uh, uh, results in the production of new products that help in research, agriculture, industries, health science, finally bettering our lives and livelihoods, or the health of our planet. So biotechnology basically uses many other tools to develop new tools or products for for the betterment of our livelihood or lives. If we can generalize, biotechnology can help or can support the conservation of biological diversity directly or indirectly. Basically, biotechnological interventions are helpful in the conservation of diversity in agriculture, for the maintenance of domestic breeds of animals, for wildlife conservation, of course. So it can help directly or indirectly. Directly, there are so many we can use so many technology or tools like tissue culture, organ culture, seed culture, cryopreservation. Genetic mapping means exploring the genetic characters of plants and animals. Thereby, we can restore or reintroduce any animal or plant into the wild ecosystem, or in the cultivated ecosystem also. So these are the direct methods. We'll discuss some of them in this presentation. Indirectly means by preserving, by exploring the high economic value, or by getting financial benefits, people are usually encouraged to protect the native plant and animal diversity. Suppose people, I mean, what I want to say is that, suppose the final result, finally, from biotechnology can convert a leaf, a simple leaf can be converted, or the end result may be a high economic value by using biotechnology tools. A simple leaf or a simple part of animal may be high economic value by using the biotechnological tools. We can develop a new product, or a very economically important product, to develop a new tool or new product. So finally, the end result may be very high economic value, so that the people may be encouraged to protect that particular plant or animal. We'll discuss in also later. uh, According to the guidelines of IUCN, that is the International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, both in situ and ex situ methods are should be used to protect the conservation of biological diversity, or you can say endangered or threatened plants and animals. So in this process, conservation can be done in vivo or in vitro. In vivo means live animals and plants are protected, and in vitro means we can protect the plants and animals, or part of them by cryopreservation methods, or by long-term storage methods. Again, in vivo, there are two we can use in situ and ex situ. In situ means we can preserve the animals or plants in the natural environment, or we can bring them from their natural environment and conserve them in their in artificial environments like zoos, laboratory, greenhouses, gene bank, DNA bank, etc. So both this in vitro and in vitro technology and ex situ method, these two things use various tools like cryopreservation, what I said earlier. Cryopreservation methods like by preserving the seeds, pollens, propagules, micropropagation, tissue culture, by common, constructing gene banks, DNA banks, etc. So let us discuss some of these widely used popular biotechnological methods or tools for the conservation of biological diversity. The most common method is cryopreservation. Means cryopreservation means it is the one of the biotechnological method for ex situ conservation of for long term and long term of storage for genetic materials. Cryopreservation is extremely helpful method to conserve rare, endangered, threatened plants and animal species by preserving their seeds, propagules, various propagules like seeds, pollens, meristematic cells. In case of animals, semen, oocytes, embryos, those are protected in very low and ultra low temperature like in liquid nitrogen. Here I have given an example of the, you can say, the pollen grains are germinating. These are the pollen grains which have been earlier preserved in liquid nitrogen for at least 1 month. Then it has been brought out to the normal temperature and found that the pollen grains are germinating. The pollen tube is germinating. So using these pollens, we have cross-pollinated the female cone of taro or Colocasia esculenta, and after pollination, the seeds also formed, and finally the seeds also germinated in vitro. So this is only one case. There are so many other pollen or seeds have been cryopreserved, and again they have been also germinated. These by conserving these pollen propagules, pollens, seeds, etc., we form gene banks where the germ plasm is stored for long term purpose in ultra low temperature or low temperature. We can preserve them for 5 years, 10 years, and more than that also. This is one of the cryopreservation is very widely used and very old technology. Okay. Another method, you also, most of the people, most of the scientists, researchers are using nowadays, that is tissue culture technology. The somatic embryogenesis and organogenesis means the development of a somatic embryo by the differentiation of a single somatic cell or tissue to regenerate a large number of plants. At the same time, applied to regenerate several endangered plants for the purpose of conservation. That means there are so many plants, they are very slow growing, or their multiplication rate is very slow. So, and their number is gradually decreasing day by day due to the various effects like climate change and environmental stress. So these threatened plants, sometimes, many times they are medicinal plants maybe also. So from the meristematic cells, a whole plant can be generated. These slow growing or endangered plants, from the small meristematic cell we can grow a whole plant, and also multiply them by the method of micro propagation and the cloning method. Means by this tissue culture technology, we develop micro propagules. Micro propagules means it is the in vitro propagation of plants or possesses huge potential in the production of high quality based medicines. At the same time, means by tissue culture method we generate the artificial seeds, you can say. These are very helpful in protection of endangered threatened plant species. Very many forest species have been successfully by through this micropropagation technologies, those have been restored or reintroduced in the wild environment. In case of animals, in situ and ex situ conservation programs for some endangered mammal species can benefit from modern reproductive biotechnologies or assisted reproductive technologies, including artificial insemination, embryo transfer, in vitro fertilization, gamete embryogenesis, micro manipulation, semen embryo sexing, and genome resource banking. One of these technology is intracytoplasmic spore injection technique. By this technique, you must have heard that there is a animal called northern white rhino. The last female died some months back. So now there are only 2 females left. So now scientists have been very successfully developed embryos by this ICSI, means intracytoplasmic sperm injection method. The photograph, a demographic demonstration has been presented here. By this technique, the scientists have developed an embryo which contains the DNA of the kind of the last northern white rhino, and there the scientists are hoping to save the subspecies from extinction. Once a male rhino is developed, then subsequently they can be bred to develop new offsprings. So these are very sensitive technologies and very efficient technologies to sustain wildlife, to conserve, to protect the wildlife. Again, we have so many biological diversity, we have so many varieties of plants, animals, agricultural crops, but thing is that unless until we explore what are the characters they bear, we cannot use them, especially the genetic characters. So like here you can say, you can see that there are so many different types of rice panicles are there, that the shape, size, color are very different. They possess different characters, but thing is that we should know what are the genes they possess, or what are the characters, what are the stress tolerant genes or biotic stress tolerant genes they possess. So for that we use molecular tools, like we have to characterize them first. We have to know what characters or what genes they possess. Like there are so many technologies available, especially we use molecular markers, which are short stretch of DNA segments present close to a gene or specific regions within the genome. Thus, they act as a flag post for the genes of interest and are used for markers assisted breeding and selection in plants. Nowadays we all know about the PCR technology, polymerase chain reaction technology. Non-PCR technology are also there to characterize genetically various plants and animals. And another technology for crop diversity, characterization of crop diversity or genetic characterization of crop diversity is allele mining, in which it is an approach that is used to dissect naturally occurring allelic variations or suitable alleles of a candidate gene controlling key agronomic traits which has potential in crop improvement. So these are few technologies, the biotechnologies that means biological technology. Those are being used nowadays for the exploration of genetic character of a plant or animal. Now DNA barcoding is very useful in wildlife conservation. It is very useful in wildlife trafficking, poaching, etc., and also characterizing endangered and threatened animal species. This barcoding technology is very useful in identifying or in or characterizing wildlife diversity, like endangered species like tigers. Further, it is also helpful in the taxonomic clarity. It brings taxonomic clarity among wildlife. This is a very genetic modification, or you can say transgenic technology, genetically modified crops. This is more or less a controversial thing, but it has been successfully, the technology is there. What is genetic modification or transgenic? It is the use of a recombinant DNA technology and asexual gene transfer methods that alter the structure or expression of specific genes or traits. A genetically modified organism or transgenic is one that has been obtained by the insertion of one or more genes from another organism. We bring gene of interest from other plant and put them in our crop plant. Like here I have shown an example. The salt tolerant gene, superoxide dismutase, SOD1 gene, it has been successfully brought from Avicennia alba, a mangrove plant which grows in salt stress environment. The gene has been successfully transferred to the Pusa Basmati 1 rice variety, and by that salt stress tolerance up to 100 millimolar could be achieved. So this is one example, but there are so many other genes that those have been successfully transferred to from one plant or from one plant to another plant, and the genes are also expressive. thereby impacting various stress tolerance to the crops. Another example is bacillus thuringiensis. This is more controversial thing. Many people are opposing the use of GMOs or transgenic crops to be used widely. But the technology has been developed. What my aim is that I want to inform that the technology is there. So, like in Bacillus thuringiensis, this is a microbe. This is a bacteria. The insecticidal genetic gene that produces delta endotoxin, it has been transferred to some crop plants, and those impacting anti-insect properties. That means the insect dies after feeding the crop. So, but the thing is that it is going through many resistance and debate. Another biotechnological tool we are using nowadays, or some successfully used in many plants, to discriminate the male and female plant in dioecious plants. The morphology is very same, and from earlier stage, if you can know the male and female plant, then it will be very helpful for the for planning conservation strategy. Like a PCR based technologies has been developed to distinguishing between the male and female Calamus guruba plant, that is a cane plant, and in also date palm plant. Uh, it takes more than 5 to 10 years to distinguish between a male and female date palm plant. But using the PCR technologies or using the biotechnology, we can distinguish from the seedling stage that which is male plant and which is female plant. Thereby, we can formulate conservation strategies. So these are some direct biotechnological tools we can use to conserve the biodiversity. And as I was telling earlier, there are many laws, many acts already came into force which protect the benefits, the rights of the beholder of the beholder of the biological diversity. That means the native people, their rights has been conserved, or their rights has been protected by various laws like intellectual property right law, Biological Diversity Act, and various other acts also. So people are ultimately getting benefits. The native plant or the native animal has been used. Biotechnology is used to get new products. They are getting financial benefits. Thereby, they are encouraged to conserve the native diversity. One such act is this Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001. Various varieties of crops has been registered in this authority, and farmers are getting rights, getting financial benefits, and thereby they are protecting the land races, which are the land races. People are nowadays they are not cultivating the older land races. They are simply going for high yielding plants and high yielding crop varieties. So when they are getting when the genes from these land races has been transferred to other the cultivated plants, or by you can by biotechnology methods, or by conventional breeding methods, ultimately we are getting new varieties of crops having more efficiency. So people who they're conserving, or community people, not only people, community villages also, they are protecting these land races of various crops. So like I was telling, Biological Diversity Act 2002 also protecting many the rights and the benefits of the local people, you can say there are so many examples, so we'll not discuss it in detail. So ultimately, when you get genetically improved, I'm not telling genetically modified, when we get genetically improved crops, domestic breeds, and other agriculture and animal husbandry related products. So people, if we use them in integrated farming system, we only not the farmers, not only they get financial benefits, but also they are encouraged to protect the biological diversity. But certainly there are some limitations of the use of this biotechnology towards conservation of biodiversity. Like we can preserve the genetic material. Suppose we preserve the seeds of a particular plant, and we can preserve it for 5 years, 10 years. But in that process, we are stopping the evolution process. If they are growing in natural environment, they will grow through evolution process and genetically improvement naturally. But by preserving, we are stopping the evolution. Simply in micro propagation and tissue culture technique also, we simply producing monoclonal or clonal. We are simply doing cloning. We are not doing any genetical improvement. Simply the same genetic makeup is inherited or multiplied in large numbers. Further, those techniques are also very many times very costly and high technical inputs are there. So sometimes these discourage to adopt the biotechnological tools. There are certainly some limitations, but it is also true that by technological intervention, we can definitely conserve the biological diversity in a larger picture. But we have to use it very carefully, because nowadays people are saying that these genetically improved or genetically modified plants, they are harming the native biodiversity. In some extent, to some extent, it is true also. But science and ethics, those two things should run at a time. Means when scientific discovery is there, we should follow the ethics also. And carefully using these biotechnological tools, we can definitely conserve the biological diversity, and we can definitely be successful. We can get financial benefits, we can get conservation also. So these are all. This is all from my side, and I hope this webinar will be a very hugely successful one. I congratulate everybody, and I thank Professor Ashish Panigrahi sir for allowing me to be a part of this program. And thanks everybody. Thank you, and happy World Environment Day. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. The web seminar on Cat 2 biodiversity was organized on the occasion of World Environment Day. As this year, the Environment Day theme is biodiversity. From this web seminar, we enriched about the biological diversity of plants and animals and its environmental aspects. The biodiversity is decreasing day by day due to various reasons. If it does not stop, then our Earth would no longer be place to live. Therefore, different measures help in increasing the biodiversity of the earth. Biodiversity in flora and fauna is the needed of the hour. Therefore, we should take various countermeasures to stop the reduction of endangering species. Furthermore, pollution from vehicles should decrease so that animals can get fresh air to breathe. Moreover, it will also decrease global warming, which is the major cause of the extinction of the species. Biodiversity is an issue that affects everyone, and therefore everyone should be aware of their effect on biodiversity. The continuous decreasing of the biodiversity will be threats to the future human survival. Therefore, we should care to the biodiversity. Initially, the ENVIS coordinator Professor Ashish Kumar Panigrahi welcomed to the speakers and participants. The Honorable Vice-chancellor Professor Shankar Kumar Ghosh, University of Kalyani, was inaugurated through his valuable talk. The eminent speakers from different locations talked in the seminar on various aspects of biodiversity. It is our pleasure that over 2,000 participants from all over the world, majority from Asian countries and some are from USA, Europe and Australia, were actively participated in the seminar. Their queries also answered by our experts. Thanks to all for the patience to present in the web seminar. First, I thanks to our Honorable Vice-chancellor to give his kind permission for conducting this web seminar and also inaugurating the seminar. Thanks to our coordinator, Professor Ashish Kumar Panigrahi, who guided us and gives his valuable suggestions time to time. Thanks to the ENVIS Secretariat and their staffs for encouraging us, and thanks to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change for sponsoring the seminar. Thanks to our eminent speakers for giving their valuable lectures. Thanks to Dr. A.K. Sanal, Chairman Biodiversity Board, for his informative lecture on status of biodiversity in India. In his lecture, he informed how biodiversity influences our ecosystem and how biodiversity is valuable for us with conservation. Thanks to Dr. Ananta Pandey, scientist, Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, and 3 times participated in Antarctica expedition, for his informative lecture on biodiversity of Antarctica. He accepted our invitation during his stay in Cape Town on return from Antarctica expedition due to lockdown of corona pandemic. In his lecture, he gave the information about the wildlife monitoring of Antarctica. He mainly encouraged the students about the involvement of Antarctica and polar research. Thanks to Dr. Nirasen Sarkar, Department of Botany, University of Kalyani, for her relevant lecture on corona pandemic effect on biodiversity. She gave the information about policies, conservation and medicines. Thanks to Dr. Punarvasu Chaudhary from University of Calcutta for his lecture on mangrove biodiversity, who was also detained in quarantine after his Antarctica expedition. He was discussed about flora and fauna, status of Indian biodiversity of mangrove in Sundarban areas. Thanks to Dr. Subhanshu Naik, Odisha Biodiversity Board, for his theme-based information lecture on biodiversity boost conservation. He gave the information about how biotechnological tools used for biodiversity conservation, protection and also policy. We could not able to include one of our panel speakers, Professor Nimai Shah, Honorable Vice-chancellor, University of Bardhaman, due to some technical problems. The e-certificates of the participants will send to their respective mails. As the number of participants is very high, it will take time to distribute the certificates all. Please mail us if you will not receive the certificate within 1 month of the seminar. For any further query, all are requested to send us mail, which will be responded to our best. Thanks to ENVIS staffs, Mr. Saurav Banerjee, Mr. Tanmay Acharya and Mr. Shubham Datta. Last but not least, thanks to who are directly or indirectly involved in the seminar and make the seminar success. Thank you.